What is up, y'all? This is the Mr. 64, and I am here to talk about the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and whether or not it's any good. Of course, from a fanboy's perspective. Now, before I start, I have to explain something. I have to reiterate, I am not a movie critic, and I am not a reviewer. I simply have a love for Super Mario stuff. My point of view is coming from someone who simply watches movies to enjoy them and the stories they tell, not to analyze every single detail and pick them apart and go super deep in on the topic. I'd rather reserve that stuff for the actual movie critics and the actual movie reviewers. Also, I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should like the movie. I respect that there are people out there who don't like it maybe because they don't play video games, and, the movie does rely a lot on references instead of, actual genuine storytelling. But I'm just here to tell you what I think about it, and the thoughts that I had after watching the movie for the first time. Also, and this is gonna sound funny, I don't know how to retrieve movie clips, because the movie's still in theaters, and I don't want to use a bunch of repeating clips from trailers, because I'm sure that y'all have seen the trailers. We don't need to look at the trailers again. So instead of showing stuff from the movie, as you can see right now, I'm gonna be playing New Super Mario Bros. Wii in the background. So anyways, on with my thoughts. So the first thought that I had is, obviously the movie opens and we got Bowser and all that, and we've seen that in the trailer, and that whole part where Bowser burns down the castle is it's kind of scary, but visually it's just gorgeous. I don't know. I kind of feel bad because the penguins are oh shit, he's destroying our home, but I'm over here wow, this looks amazing. Anyways, so there's that, and then after that, I believe the first thing that we see is the trailer that they made, that Mario and Luigi made for their, plumbing business, and I didn't notice this while watching the movie, and I hadn't seen it in the trailers, but apparently, you can see parts of the green screen in the background, and I thought that was funny. But one thing I wanted to mention about the commercial is, they're talking in their stereotypical Italian accent voices like they do, in the games. And then, once they get out of the commercial, they're talking like normal people, and actually, in a way, I kind of like that, because I remember when the movie was first announced, I was like, how in the world are they going to have these characters talking through the entire movie? I don't know. But anyways, so I love that part, and of course, I have to point out, Giuseppe, the guy who showed up in the cafe and he was playing a game called Jumpman, and he was actually voiced by Charles Martinet himself, so he actually had that Mario voice that we all know and love, so that was a nice homage there. And I also appreciate the cameos for Pauline and Spike. I remember when the announcement first came out and they were revealing the voice cast and they mentioned Spike, and I'm like, where the hell are they going to put Spike in the movie? Do people even know who he is? I mean, I guess if you are an adult, or if by some chance you've played Wrecking Crew, then I guess you would know who Spike is, but we don't talk about Spike very much. He just kind of showed up, and I'm like, how is he gonna be in this movie? But honestly, I kind of like how they incorporated his character, and I like how they made him kind of a bully character. I guess I see him being that way because I have fond memories of playing Wrecking Crew, and I used to get so pissed off at him. I'd be like, Spike, you need to stop. I'm trying to fucking do my work here, and you're just getting in my way all the time. And I also liked Pauline's cameo. I know she didn't really have that big of a presence in the movie. She was just on a news report, I think. It was when there was a huge water line breakage, and she was on the news talking about it. But, just seeing her for 8 seconds, I love that. I think that she as a character, I think, deserves more attention because, I mean, she was in Odyssey, but before that, I mean, she was always the most stereotypical damsel in distress character, and I think that she deserves better than that. I'd also like to mention Luigi's ringtone in the movie. So first of all, this is kind of off topic. I love that his phone screen is cracked. And he drops it like 3 times in that one scene. So like, of course his screen is gonna be cracked because he's like super clumsy, But I wanted to talk about the ringtone. I remember watching a brief trailer for the movie before I actually went to see it, and it had that ringtone, and I only heard like 5 notes, and I was thinking, is that the GameCube startup music? And then, I go and watch the movie. Yeah, it was the freaking GameCube startup thing, and, that's not a reference that I expected from this movie, but I freaking love that. That's so great, because, like, the GameCube has, like, the best startup of any game console ever, so that was a great reference. And I know it's kind of basic, but I appreciate that the two, while not, like, going super in depth about their character, they at least stayed in character, like Mario's brave. Obviously, they're both brave, but like he's very openly brave and he's very protective of his brother, and he's also pretty outgoing, whereas Luigi is like brave, but you can tell that he has like an anxious energy around them, and like I mentioned before, he's very clumsy, like I can definitely relate to that, especially the whole being anxious nonstop thing. I love that. The part where they go to the person's house and the dog is there and Luigi accidentally breaks the dog's bone and the dog gets like hella pissed off. Like, Jesus Christ, that fucking dog was like absolutely ruthless. Like, you couldn't just get a new bone, he had to fucking kill them, or at least try to kill them. Like, holy shit. But I pointed out because the dog in the movie looks a lot like my actual dog. So the entire time I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, this dog looks an awful lot like Sonny, but he's over here trying to kill Luigi, so that's great. And I mean, like, when I watched that part, I just sat there thinking, this is definitely an Illumination thing. Like, I don't know why, but just based on what I've seen from Illumination in the past, it just seems like something I've come to expect from Illumination movies. Just random scenes of fucking dogs trying to come after people for some reason. And he's like the most persistent dog ever. And of course the part where they're hanging in the window and he's got the dog by his butt on a plunger. That was great. Yeah, so when I saw the dog and saw it look just like my own dog, I'm like, oh, what are the odds? Freaking I love that. So I wanted to mention something that was kind of weird. The way that they get to the Mushroom Kingdom, I guess it kind of makes sense, but to me it's a bit odd because, they're kind of like, they're just walking through this sewer and then all of a sudden they come across this pipe, and it's funny because like you can see like the aesthetic of this underground area, and then all of a sudden you just have a green pipe sitting there, and it's like, huh. Imagine that. You just happen to have a pipe sitting there that looks nothing like anything else in the scene. I mean, I guess they went through the effort to make it not like bright green, but it still kind of juts out a little bit. And I'm wondering, like, because clearly they've never seen this before, so like, is the city of Brooklyn aware that this pipe exists? Is the city hiding it from people? Does Pauline know about the existence of this pipe that takes people to the Mushroom Kingdom? I'm just wondering that because obviously, like, when they see the pipe, they don't know what it is, and they had not seen it up to that point. So I'm just wondering, like, why is it there? Where did it come from? Who put it there? Does Brooklyn actually have a connection to the Mushroom Kingdom? Like, I don't know. It's weird. The next thing I wanted to mention, the scene where Mario flies out of the pipe. I've mentioned this in my trailer video, but when I first watched the original teaser trailer for the movie and Mario came flying out of the pipe and then he looks around and sees a bunch of mushrooms everywhere, it just reminded me of the scene in the Sonic movie where Sonic was like, if this world ends up not working out for me, I gotta go to the next world, and the next world was what they called the Mushroom World. And Sonic was like, I really, really don't want to go to the Mushroom World, and I just think that's the funniest thing, because they're kind of like poking fun at that whole Mario versus Sonic thing from the fucking 90s. I love that. But anyways, so I wanted to mention the voice actor, specifically Keegan-Michael Key. I guess I wasn't really sure what I was expecting from the Toad voice, but it honestly wasn't that, but I was very pleasantly surprised. I actually love the voice that he provided for Toad, and part of me wishes that that's how he sounded in the games. Like, I don't know, I thought his performance for that was really great. And you know, of course, I have a lot of good things to say about the other voice actors too. Like, I mean, I know that Chris Pratt was kind of a weird choice for Mario, but I feel like he was fine. You know, I thought he was perfectly fine. I thought he did the role well enough. I don't feel like he butchered it in any way, you know? I thought it was fine. When I heard about Charlie Day being Luigi, like, I don't know. It seems kind of funny to me. But it also, like, makes sense. I've never watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but I know that the characters in that show have a lot of chaotic energy, and I remember this one specific scene from the show where Charlie's character was eating spaghetti out of a bag, and so when I found out he was gonna voice Luigi, I was like, oh, so he can have the scene where he's eating spaghetti out of a fucking plastic bag. I love that. I was like, yes, that's perfect. And then, of course, the whole Jack Black as Bowser thing was so legendary that it became a meme in and of itself. So there's that. And then the other voice actors I thought were all fantastic, you know? I loved them. I know that some people have had, like, criticisms about the voice cast, and I do agree with the whole, like, making the entire voice cast a bunch of celebrities is kind of strange, and I wish that there were more movies that had, like, voice actors who aren't maybe as well known. But, you know, I thought that their choices were great, so, I mean, I guess it works, you know? It's fine. So the part where Mario and Toad are walking through, like, the mushroom forest, I guess is what you would call it, and Toad's, like, explaining everything, there's a brief moment where the camera's focused on Mario and you can see a BRAMBALL in the background coming towards him. And, of course, the scene comes up, and I remember seeing it in the trailer, and it was probably the funniest thing I saw in any of the trailers. But I watched it in the movie, and honestly, that was still one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. I just think it's hilarious, because, like, the BRAMBALL is just standing over him, and he's like, hello, and then the BRAMBALL just kind of goes on and does its own thing, you know? I don't know, he just kind of showed up and then you never see him again. That's great. So the scene where they're walking through the castle town, I actually love that idea, and I wish that there was something more like that in the main series games, kind of like how the Zelda games have, like, the Hyrule Castle marketplace, you know? I think the only other game I can really think of where there's where Peach's Castle has, like, a little marketplace is in the original Paper Mario. They had Toad Town, you know? So, like, there were a bunch of little shops outside of Peach's Castle, and that's all I can think. There might be other games where they have something like that, but not that I know of. But I wish they would actually have something like that in the games. I think it's really cool. I also like to point out some of the references, like, well, one that juts out is the Crazy Cap store, which is honestly a reference I wasn't really expecting, but I thought it was kind of cool that that showed up. And of course the antique store where the guy's like, you know, you just gotta blow on it. And I'm like, oh no. Don't fucking tell him to blow on the cartridge. But yeah, I don't remember, like, I know there were, like, a few items scattered around the antique store that were, like, references to NES games. Oh, that reminds me, I totally forgot to mention this. There's a scene where Mario is playing Kid Icarus on the NES, and I thought that was kind of whack. Like, okay, so the NES exists in their world, I guess, in a way that almost creates, like, a paradox, kind of, but we're not going to talk about that. I just like that there was an NES and he was playing Kid Icarus, you know. By this point, we had kind of been introduced to Bowser, you know, but then, you know, they also go in and, like, Mario meets Peach and they talk about, like, going on this adventure or whatever, and Bowser's like, you know, I'm gonna marry her, and his Koopa Troop is like, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna marry her. And they're like, what the fuck? And then, you know, like he's like, oh, it's gonna be a legendary wedding, and if it doesn't work out, then I'm gonna annihilate the Mushroom Kingdom. And then they all start losing their shit, of course. But the reason why I bring that up is because I have to mention the Peaches song. Of course, I'm sure that y'all know about the Peaches song. Coming out of the movie, I couldn't quite remember how it went, but I was watching a video the other day where it was like the Peaches song, but every word is replaced with a Google image or whatever. And I love the chorus. He's like, peaches, 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 I love you. I'm like, yes, work it, you know? Like, and another funny thing about it is like, even if you didn't know that Jack Black was playing Bowser, if you just heard that song, you'd probably be able to tell like right away that that's Jack Black. Like, I don't know, it just has his vibe to it. Like, it's definitely his song. I just absolutely, it's so fucking funny. I love it. So anyways, so moving on, so there's a scene where Luigi gets chased by a bunch of dry bones, and he goes into Bowser's castle, and he gets captured by the Shy Guys and the Snifit. And I have to point out again, I know I pointed this out in my trailer video, but I have to point out again that I love that the Snifit is in this movie. I've always considered Snifits to be one of my favorite Super Mario enemies, and I think it's partly because I tend to gravitate towards the ones who don't have a lot of representation, and of course, you know, like, you can see Shy Guys in a lot of Super Mario games, whether it be main series or spin-off games, but you don't see Snifits very much. So not only was the Snifit in the movie, but he got a decent amount of screen time too. You know, so I thought that was kind of cool. I liked seeing that. I was hoping to see Thwomps in the movie, of course, and that ended up not happening, but I mean, there was a brief cameo of a Chain Chomp in the scene where they're like having like a rock concert or whatever. The Chain Chomp just kind of bounces across the screen briefly, and I'm like, oh look, there's the boy! And then, of course, the Snifit. There's no Thwomp in the movie, but it's fine. Maybe if they make another Super Mario Bros. Movie, they'll put the Thwomp in there. I really hope they do, because I think that would be great. But seeing the Chain Chomp and the Snifit honestly made up for it, you know? So there's that. I also want to mention, so the scene where Bowser is talking to Luigi, you know, like he's actually like kind of terrifying in a way, you know, like he actually seems like a genuine threat. I don't know if it's because I mean, it could be because I've seen so many animated movies recently that don't really have strong villains, you know? Like, there's either no villain at all, or the villain is, like, a pathetic excuse of a villain. So, like, seeing Bowser and actually, like, seeing the threat that he poses to Luigi and Mario and his crew, you know? I appreciate that a lot. I really enjoyed seeing Peach in this movie, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that she was not the one being rescued, rather she was one of the ones doing the rescuing. I love her confidence and willingness to stand up for her toads and her kingdom no matter the risks. Like the scene where Bowser actually directly confronted her and asked her to marry him, and she was willing to do anything to save her toads, including agreeing to marry him. I mean, we all knew that she wasn't actually gonna do that, but the fact that in the moment she was willing to do that to save her toads, like, I don't know, I have a lot of respect for that. I liked her character in this movie. There was a scene in the movie where you can see Mario and Peach and Toad on their way to the I'll call it the Gorilla Kingdom. I don't know what the hell they called it in the movie. The place where Donkey Kong is, basically. And I feel like this is a part of the movie where the pacing was a bit off. Like, they just kind of breezed through those parts. And I would have liked to see them a little bit more in depth. You know? Like, especially the scenes where they walk through, like, the desert. Like, they only show the desert for maybe a few seconds and then they move on. Like, what's going on in that desert? I'd like to see a little bit of that. Like, I guess what I'm saying is they could have fleshed out that scene just a little bit more They just kind of showed them briefly walking through each other. And I mean, I did think it was kind of cool, especially the part where they're on the bridge and the cheap jeeps are flying around, and even the part where they're in the jungle and the Yoshis are there. But it would have been cool if they could have fleshed out that part of the movie just a little bit more. I'm kind of sad that Yoshi didn't get a whole lot of screen time in this movie. And spoiler alert, but the end of the movie suggests that there will be a second movie with Yoshi. But I wish that in this movie, Yoshi had a more prominent role. And I would like to mention, I mean, this isn't like necessarily relevant to how good the movie was, but the scene where Peach and Mario and Toad make it to the Gorilla Kingdom and the guy is taking them to Cranky Kong, they play the song Take On Me, and that was one of my favorite 80s songs as a kid. And I have fond memories of obsessing over this song and obsessing over playing games like Super Mario Galaxy 2. So the fact that in the Super Mario Bros. Movie they put the song Take On Me, that literally for me, that was like a match made in heaven. This was one moment in the movie where I actually wanted to cry. Because I was like, oh, I love this song so much. It like reminded me of part of my childhood, you know. It really hit me in the feels, so there's that. I did appreciate the inclusion of Cranky Kong and Donkey Kong in the movie, and also I like how Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong also had cameos. I mean, they weren't like prominent characters, they only had maybe up to like 8 seconds of screen time. But I thought it was still kind of cool to see them in the movie. I guess for some reason I wasn't expecting to see them, but when I saw them, I was like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. You know, like, why would Diddy Kong not be there? You know? So I liked it. I liked that they were in the movie. And of course, the scene where Mario and Donkey Kong duke it out is just great. I especially love the inclusion of the cat suit. Yet another reference I wasn't really expecting, because I mean the cat suit only appeared in 3D World, and I know that 3D World is on the Wii U and it's also on the Switch, so maybe there's a lot of people who played 3D World, but I was still really happy to see that, especially because, you know, and if you think about it, there really aren't that many other power-ups that you see in the movie, so the fact that they put the cat suit in there I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, I really enjoyed seeing Donkey Kong in this movie. And speaking of Donkey Kong, I want to fast forward a little bit through the movie. There's a scene where they're on Rainbow Road, of course, and at one point that blue paratrooper turns himself into a blue shell, and I thought that was kind of a funny reference. But there's a part where Mario and Donkey Kong get swallowed by the eel. It's called Meeee, but I still like to call it unagi. I've been calling it unagi for years. So anyways, they get swallowed by the eel. And they're just kind of sitting there in the eel's belly, you know. They kind of get into an argument talking about like how they've had it rough, how their parents are hard on them and all that. And they were just kind of eating at each other the entire time. And then all of a sudden, you know, they find the rocket from Donkey Kong's cart and they use it to get to Peach and Bowser and Toad. But the part where they were sitting in there, like, arguing, I kind of wish that the movie writers would have taken just a little bit more time to kind of let these two characters really talk and kind of get to know each other a little bit better, because I feel like if they had gotten to know each other better and found things that they have in common, then they could become, like, actual friends. And then the part where the two go on their way to rescue Peach and Toad and Luigi, I feel like that would have been a lot more rewarding, whereas what we got was just them bickering and arguing, and then all of a sudden they go off to rescue Peach. Like, I don't know. I do wish they would have fleshed out that part a little bit more. That's like that's probably my biggest gripe with the movie, though. I felt like the climax for the movie was a bit long, and I guess that also goes along with the pacing thing, because I've heard a lot of people say the pacing was off, and I get that. I felt like the climax started with the go-kart scene, like when they got onto Rainbow Road and then Bowser's troops showed up and they were on Rainbow Road. From there to the part at the very end when they finally defeat Bowser, I feel like that part was really long and kind of drawn out. Like, I know I'm not much of a moviegoer, you know, but I have seen a lot of animated movies, and I don't remember any of them having a climax that's that long. I don't really know if the writers or director intended for the climax to start with the go-kart scene, but I personally felt like that's where it started. And between there and the end of the boss fight, I felt like it was a bit long. In regards to that, I feel like the pacing was off. As I mentioned before, I wish there were parts that were explored more in depth where the movie just kind of grazes over stuff. Like, the movie just kind of grazes over the part where they go on their journey from the Mushroom Kingdom to the Gorilla Kingdom, and I would have loved to see that more in depth. Especially the scene with the Yoshi jungle. Like, maybe they could have given some context for the next movie, considering they hinted at Yoshi being prominent in the second movie at the very end after the credits. So I would have liked to see that, but I mean, you know, what's done is done. The story itself wasn't really groundbreaking. It was kind of, I guess, generic or predictable, but I mean, this came from Illumination. I honestly didn't expect a whole lot. I was happy to see that they collaborated with Nintendo directly on the movie, but I mean, it's still Illumination, you know, so my expectations were pretty low going into this movie. I think in terms of fan service, it suffices. But for storytelling, not so much. One thing I was wondering walking out of the movie is, I mean, what happened to the penguins? You know, their castle got destroyed by Bowser, and they were taken prisoner, and you could see them in the dungeon where Luigi was put. And you don't even really get to see them after the scene where the prisoners are going to be dropped into the lava below. Like, I assumed that they were saved because everyone else was saved, you know, like Cranky Kong and Luigi were saved, you know, so I assume that the penguins were too. But, like, what happened to them? You know, did they ever get their castle rebuilt? Did the Mario Bros help them reclaim their land and get their castle back? You know, I'm wondering, like, why would they leave that out of the movie, especially because that was literally what they opened the movie with. They opened it with Bowser destroying the penguins' castle and getting their star. So what happened to them after the movie? You know, like, I wish that they would have talked about that. I don't know, it was, even if it was just a brief segment where they showed, like, the penguins getting their castle rebuilt, I would have appreciated that. But no, they didn't do anything. They just kind of left us hanging, you know, so that was a little bit disappointing. But the rest of the movie I thought was pretty great, you know. It has flaws, obviously. I've never seen an animated movie that didn't have something wrong with it. But I enjoyed it, and I definitely will watch it again sometime. So since at the very end they did in fact hint at another movie with the Yoshi egg, which by the way was in the sewer in Brooklyn, like, I don't know. How the hell did it get there? Could you imagine, like, if Yoshi just kind of showed up in Brooklyn? I mean, I guess they were probably kind of surprised when Bowser showed up in Brooklyn, but, like, how did Yoshi get there? I don't know. But anyways, so my hopes for the second movie, we definitely need to see Yoshi more. This is probably a bit of a stretch, but I would love to see Wario be the villain of the second movie. You know, kind of like how you got Super Mario Land. I mean, I know Bowser wasn't in that game, but you got Super Mario Land with Tatanga or whatever, and then Super Mario Land 2 had Wario. And they haven't really portrayed Wario as an actual, like, villain character in many games. But I would love to see the second movie have Wario be the villain. And I think the cherry on top would be if they also had Waluigi in the movie. I know that's probably asking for a lot from Nintendo, but if they at least put Wario in the movie, that would be amazing. And of course, you know, I mentioned earlier, I'd love to see the Thwomps in the movie too, because they're like my favorite, you know. And I also hope that Luigi can play a bigger role in the second film, because of course he was taken prisoner by Bowser, so you don't actually see him a whole lot in this movie, and I really hope that in the second movie he actually plays a bigger role. I haven't watched any critical reviews of this movie yet. You know, I do follow a lot of YouTubers who do movie analysis and reviews, but I haven't watched any reviews about this movie specifically. I've seen snippets of what people are saying about it, and I am a little bit sad that critics are panning it. Like, I saw on Rotten Tomatoes that critics had given it like a 55%, and then the audience rating was 96%. I'm assuming the reason why is because, like, as a movie, it might be maybe less than thrilling, not really groundbreaking in any way, and there's a lot wrong with it. But in terms of, like, a movie made for video game fans and Super Mario fans, I loved it, I thought it was great. I'd probably consider it one of my favorite movies of all time. Now, I know that's honestly probably not saying a whole lot, because the Super Mario series has been one of my favorite things of all time since I was a kid. So me saying that this movie's my favorite movie ever probably isn't saying much. I'm glad to see that a lot of other people enjoyed it too, even if there were people who ended up maybe not enjoying it or having a lot of critical things to say about it. Because, obviously all movies are going to have stuff like that. Anyways, so yeah, I definitely really enjoyed watching this movie. I think I want to go see it again in theaters before they take it out and then put it on, like, DVD and Blu-ray. Maybe when I go back, I can find a few things in the movie that I didn't notice in my first viewing of it. So anyways, yeah, that's my thoughts on the movie. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my opinion. Listening to my opinion. Anyways, so that's that. I hope you enjoyed. So, toodles, y'all.